They thought you were the type to get angry fast and cool down just as quickly, the type who would shout, break a little, forgive, and keep the cycle alive. They underestimated the patience you learned in silence. They didn't realize that while they were busy playing games, you were busy taking notes. They thought you'd react instantly, that you'd try to prove something, defend yourself, fight back in the moment. But you didn't. You observed. You let them show their patterns, their selfishness, their carelessness. They thought your quiet meant weakness, but it was the slow loading of a storm they were too blind to see. They thought you'd try to settle the score immediately, just enough to feel even. But they didn't know you learned a different philosophy. You don't get even. You get distant. You get stronger. And then your life itself becomes the revenge they never prepared for. They believed you would lash out, break down, or crumble when they messed with you. They didn't expect you to go silent. They didn't expect you to go cold. They didn't expect that your lack of reaction would be the first hit in a long line of karmic consequences landing at their front door. They thought your revenge would be explosive, loud, messy, chaotic. But no, your revenge was calm, clean, surgical. You simply removed yourself. You removed your presence, your kindness, your loyalty, your energy. And when you left, their world lost the balance they didn't know you provided. They expected a dramatic confrontation, but your revenge didn't need theatrics. It was in how you healed without them. How you stopped showing up. How you stopped caring. How your glow returned while theirs faded. How you rose while they stayed exactly the same. They thought you'd want payback that matched their actions. They didn't realize your revenge was not destruction, it was evolution. And nothing terrifies people more than watching someone they underestimated become untouchable. They assumed they still had emotional power over you. They expected you to react, scream, cry, beg, reason something, but you were done speaking their language. Your silence was the arc they never saw coming. They thought you'd get tired and come back, that you'd break your own boundaries because they never respected them. But your revenge was in honoring yourself so fiercely that you became unreachable to those who once walked all over you. They tried to make you feel small, but you outgrew the entire version of yourself that tolerated them. Your revenge wasn't a flame, it was wings, and now you fly over the ruins of the bridges they burned. They thought they'd hurt you enough to keep you in place, trapped in their narrative, but your revenge was in escaping the container they tried to put you in. You didn't just survive, you upgraded. They thought you were predictable, but the moment you stopped playing along, their entire script collapsed. They couldn't handle a plot they didn't control, and your revenge was rewriting the story without including them. They thought the worst thing you'd do was leave. But the real revenge was showing them you didn't just leave, you improved. You evolved. You built a life so peaceful, so powerful, so full they can't stand watching it from outside. They thought your heart would stay soft after everything. But you gave them what they earned, boundaries like steel, access denied, and a version of you they never deserved to meet. They thought you'd break. Instead, you hardened in the right places and healed in the right ones. Your revenge was becoming the strongest version of yourself because of what they tried to destroy. They thought your downfall would be public, humiliating, dramatic. Instead, their downfall is the quiet one, cracking internally while pretending everything is fine. And you're too far removed to care. They thought you wanted apology, closure, or some attempt at fixing things, but your revenge was closure without conversation, healing without permission, moving on without explanation. They believed you'd eventually forgive and forget, but your revenge was remembering who they truly were and forgetting who you pretended they could be. They thought you'd spend your nights replaying the past, but the only thing you replayed was your comeback. And every single day, you woke up farther from them and closer to the version of yourself that terrifies them. They thought karma would take years to arrive. But karma showed up early, and it arrived looking suspiciously like the consequences of your absence. They thought you'd get even, but you outgrew the scoreboard entirely. You didn't want revenge in the form of destruction. You wanted revenge in the form of evolution, and that's exactly what happened. They thought they'd see you suffering without them. Instead, they witnessed you thriving in silence. That silence, that peace, that glow, that was the revenge they never expected. They thought you'd eventually look back, but your revenge was in never glancing over your shoulder, not once. You walked forward so hard the past lost its ability to pull you back. They thought you'd stay broken long enough for them to return as the hero. But your revenge was healing so completely they no longer serve a purpose in your story. They thought your revenge would be a moment, but it became a lifestyle where they no longer exist and you no longer apologize. They thought your revenge would expire like your silence had an end date, like your strength was temporary. But every day you stayed gone, every day you didn't reach out, every day you didn't break. That was another cut they never saw coming. Your absence slowly carved the truth into them. You never needed them. They only needed you. They thought your glow would fade without their validation. Instead, it burned brighter. You became the flame they can't touch anymore, the warmth they took for granted, the fire that now lights your own path, not theirs. And that terrifies them, because they can't dim a light they no longer have access to. They thought you would chase after what you lost, but the only thing you chased was your own future. And when someone chooses growth over pain, silence over chaos, and self-respect over nostalgia, that is the kind of revenge that permanently redefines a person. They thought you'd regret leaving, but the only thing you regret is staying as long as you did. That realization alone is a scar on their ego, because now they know. You healed from them faster than they ever expected, and you are happier than they ever wanted you to be. They thought you'd one day reach out, ask how they've been, try to open that old chapter again. But you turned the page so hard the words erased themselves. You didn't just move on, you deleted the entire book and started a masterpiece without them. They thought the guilt would eat you alive, but guilt never belonged to you. It was theirs. You carried the blame only because you loved deeply, not because you were wrong. When you dropped the guilt, you dropped them too, and both fell exactly where they belonged, behind you. They thought you would fight to stay in their life. Instead, you fought to save your own peace. And when peace wins over attachment, there's no space for the people who once played with your heart like it was disposable. They thought you'd wait for an apology that would never come. But the only apology you wanted was the one you gave yourself, the apology for tolerating so much. And when you forgave yourself, your soul slammed the door in their face. They thought your strength was a performance. They didn't understand that sometimes revenge looks like smiling with a healed heart they no longer have access to. Sometimes revenge is the quiet way you rise. They thought you were walking away to make a point. But the truth is far colder. You walked away because you were done, truly done, not emotionally tangled, not secretly hoping, just done. And nothing is more brutal than a goodbye that required zero dialogue. They thought time would weaken your decision. Instead, time reinforced it. Every month you stayed silent. Every week you grew stronger. Every day you chose yourself. It all built a fortress they can't break through anymore. They thought distance would make you miss them. But distance made you see clearly. The more miles between you and them, literal or emotional, the more you realized just how little they brought to your life except chaos. They thought you'd come back eventually. But people don't return to a place that taught them self-destruction. The version of you that once tolerated them died. The version that replaced it has standards no past ghost can meet. They thought they'd always have a place in your life. But they forgot something. Roles can be recast. And they lost theirs the moment they took your kindness as weakness. Now, they're not even a footnote in the story they once thought they starred in. They thought hurting you would keep you attached. Instead, it freed you. Their betrayal was the push you didn't know you needed. In trying to break you, they accidentally made you unbreakable. They thought your silence was temporary, a phase, a mood that would slowly soften with time. They told themselves you just needed space, that you were cooling off, that eventually curiosity or emotion would pull you back into their orbit. They didn't understand that some silences are not pauses at all, some are conclusions. While they waited, hoping the quiet would crack, you were already gone in ways distance can't measure. They replayed old versions of you in their minds, searching for the familiar reactions they once controlled so easily. They expected hesitation, confusion, emotional backtracking. What they didn't realize was that version of you had already expired. Your silence wasn't trembling with unspoken words, it was clean, calm, and closed. There was no argument left inside you, no debate, only a decision. They waited for anger because anger still keeps a door open. They waited for confrontation because confrontation still means relevance. You gave them neither, and nothing terrifies people more than realizing they no longer matter enough to provoke a reaction. Your silence wasn't empty, it was sealed. They kept a place for you in their plans, their future, their imagination. They didn't know you had already removed yourself from the building entirely. They assumed time would soften you back into familiarity, not realizing time was hardening your resolve instead. Every day they waited was another day you detached further. They thought your quiet meant you were still hurting. They didn't understand your quiet meant you were healed enough to leave without noise. Hurt screams. Healing walks away without explaining itself. You didn't vanish dramatically. You exited with structure, dignity, and finality. They searched for meaning in your absence like investigators at a cold scene. They analyzed, speculated, rewrote memories, anything to convince themselves you were still emotionally reachable. They didn't know the case had already been closed before they started asking questions. They kept believing they just needed the right words, the perfect apology, the ideal timing. They never realized no sentence had clearance to reach you anymore. Your silence wasn't a filter, it was a firewall. They assumed quiet meant unfinished business. They didn't understand the business was already concluded and archived. No loose ends, no emotional debt, no return clause, just an ending that didn't ask for permission. They imagined your silence as a wall they could eventually climb. They didn't see it was an ocean they could never cross. Walls invite attempts, oceans swallow them. You didn't block them, you relocated your entire existence. They thought you were testing them. They didn't realize the test had already been failed long ago. You weren't observing anymore. You were done remembering. They believed if they waited long enough, you would soften. What they didn't know was that you weren't softening, you were crystallizing. Every quiet day strengthened the decision you had already made. They thought your silence was weak. They never understood silence is the highest form of control when it is chosen, not forced. Silence that doesn't beg, explain, or return is power in its purest form. They assumed you left emotionally. They didn't understand you left structurally, strategically, permanently. You didn't just walk away from them, you rebuilt your life in a direction where they no longer existed at all. They kept mistaking your absence for strategy, as if you were silently plotting a return that required perfect timing. They didn't understand that when someone stops planning around you, it's not strategy anymore, it's detachment. You weren't waiting for the right moment to speak. You had already chosen never to speak again in their direction. They told themselves you'd eventually crack under nostalgia, that memories would weaken your resolve. What they failed to realize was that memories were the very thing that taught you how dangerous staying would be. You didn't leave because you forgot, you left because you remembered too clearly. They assumed your silence meant unfinished emotions still lived inside you. They didn't understand silence can also mean emotions have finally been resolved with brutal honesty. You didn't leave confused. You left certain. They kept thinking something dramatic must have happened inside you. Some breakdown, some explosion. They never imagined your transformation would be so quiet it would escape their notice until it was irreversible. They waited for guilt to drag you back. They didn't realize guilt only works on people who still feel responsible for the damage others caused. You had already returned responsibility to its rightful owners. They interpreted your quiet as hesitation. They didn't understand hesitation shakes. Your silence never trembled. It stood steady like a sealed verdict. They expected the door to still exist even if it was closed. They didn't realize you didn't just close the door, you removed the entire hallway that led to it. They kept believing there must be a version of you still emotionally nearby, watching from a distance. They didn't understand proximity was emotional, not physical, and emotionally you were already decades away. They wondered how someone who once explained everything now refuses to explain anything at all. They never understood explanation as a privilege, not a requirement. They waited for regret to soften you. They didn't realize regret had already done its work by teaching you what you would never tolerate again. They didn't know when your hope died. They only noticed when their access died with it. They mistaken your detachment for punishment. They never realized punishment still implies connection. This was absence clean, silent, and complete. They believed time would reopen what silence closed. They didn't realize silence had sealed it airtight. They thought you would wake up one day missing what was lost. They never understood you woke up missing yourself, and once you found that, nothing else mattered. They kept inventing reasons to justify your silence because accepting the truth was too heavy. You didn't need them anymore. They waited for evidence that you were still emotionally invested. What they found instead was proof that you had emotionally relocated. They expected your quiet to slowly decay into weakness. They didn't realize quiet had hardened into law inside you. They thought silence required emotional effort to maintain. They didn't understand silence becomes effortless when it aligns with truth. They believed love would someday summon you back. They didn't realize love was the very thing that taught you how to leave without turning cruel. They tried to read between the lines of your absence. They didn't realize there were no hidden messages left to decode. They told themselves this was just another phase like before. They failed to see that this time you didn't threaten to leave, you simply vanished. They thought your silence was a tactic to be countered. They didn't understand it was an end state, not a move. They searched their memory for the moment they lost you. They didn't realize they lost you slowly through everything they ignored. They believed distance could be reduced. They didn't understand distance of the mind cannot be crossed by the body. They waited for your voice to return the way echoes do. They didn't realize echoes only exist when the original sound still belongs to the same space. They convinced themselves you just needed reassurance. They didn't realize reassurance stopped being your need the day self-respect became stronger than attachment. They told themselves you'd soften eventually. They didn't understand you weren't hardening, you were stabilizing. They assumed your silence meant you were still listening. They didn't realize the channel had been disconnected entirely. They hoped one unexpected message could collapse your resolve. They failed to understand your resolve no longer depended on emotion. They thought your absence was built on pain. They didn't realize it was built on clarity. They believed you were waiting for the right apology. They didn't understand apologies lose value when access expires. They thought you were punishing them by ignoring them. They didn't realize you weren't thinking about them at all. They imagined their absence in your life must have left a hole. They didn't know the space they left became the foundation for something stronger. They assumed you were still emotionally nearby, just hiding. They didn't understand you weren't hiding, you had moved on structurally, emotionally, and permanently. They thought silence still meant presence, just unseen. They didn't realize this silence meant removal, not concealment. They expected you to come back with conditions. They never realized you left with conclusions. They never knew your silence was not a pause in the story. They thought it was suspense, a temporary absence before a loud return. They misunderstood it as mood, ego, vulnerability, strategy, anything except what it truly was, a final decision. You didn't leave in anger. You didn't leave in weakness. You left in clarity. No warnings, no negotiations, no emotional debris, just one clean exit that didn't echo backward. And now they live in a strange contradiction, still listening for a voice that will never answer, still waiting at a door that no longer exists, still replaying moments that no longer belong to them. Because your silence was never temporary. It was never conditional. It was never a tactic. It was a forever goodbye delivered without noise, without mercy, and without return. They thought betrayal would shatter you. They expected noise, tears, rage, negotiations. Instead, you sat with it the way a strategist studies a ledger. No emotion on your face. No tremor in your hands. Just quiet calculation. That was the first moment they realized they were dealing with the wrong kind of soul. You didn't ask why. You didn't beg for truth. You didn't seek closure. You simply observed the loss, assessed the damage, and marked them down as a liability. That terrified them, because only amateurs confuse emotion with power. While they were rehearsing apologies and excuses, you were already closing accounts in your head. Trust, withdrawn. Access, revoked. Loyalty, declared insolvent. The transaction was silent, final, and irreversible. They expected a storm. You gave them a balance sheet. No raised voice, no dramatic exit. Just a quiet shift in energy so sharp it felt like a clean surgical cut. They couldn't understand how something meant to wound you ended up sounding like a verdict instead. Betrayal was supposed to be the weapon. You turned it into documentation. You didn't personalize it. That's what disturbed them most. You treated their treachery the way corporations treat losses, coldly, precisely, without mercy and without memory. They waited for you to explode. You updated your boundaries instead. You adjusted your future as if they were never part of the blueprint. While they were drowning in guilt and ego, you were already reallocating your time, your peace, your focus. You replaced chaos with efficiency. And nothing scares emotional manipulators more than emotional neutrality. They thought betrayal would make you desperate. Instead, it made you disciplined, sharper, cleaner, more selective, more dangerous. You didn't confront them because confrontation still acknowledges relevance. You chose erasure, and erasure is far more brutal than revenge. They tried to decode your calm. They mistook it for denial, for numbness, for shock. But it wasn't any of that. It was acceptance with a spine. You didn't grieve the betrayal. You processed it, filed it, archived it, then moved on as if they were outdated software that no longer served a purpose. They wanted a reaction. You gave them a result. You gave them the outcome they never prepared for. Your absence, executed with precision. You didn't need closure, because closure is for people who still hope. You had already closed the deal the moment trust was breached. They whispered that you were heartless now. They didn't realize you simply stopped being careless with your heart. They expected punishment. What they got was distance, and distance doesn't bruise, it erases. They kept asking how you walked away so clean. They didn't see the weeks of silent analysis before the final cut. They never saw you preparing the exit while they were still playing games. You didn't take their betrayal personally. You took it professionally. And professionalism has no room for sentiment. They wanted forgiveness. You gave them neutrality. And neutrality is colder than hatred could ever be. You didn't block them out of anger, you blocked them out of policy. They didn't ruin you. They disqualified themselves. They thought betrayal would give them leverage. Instead, it handed you clarity. You didn't spiral. You simplified. They wanted to be remembered as villains or as regrets. You remembered them as a miscalculation. You didn't seek justice. You corrected the equation. They expected damage. You delivered optimization. While they were haunted by what they did, you were unaffected by who they were. They wanted you emotionally ruined. You came back emotionally unreachable. They expected your heart to collapse. You upgraded your standards instead. They assumed betrayal would haunt you. It liberated you. They still don't understand how betrayal became paperwork in your hands instead of a wound in your chest. That's because they confuse feeling with weakness, and they never learned the art of detachment. You didn't suppress your emotions. You mastered them. They thought your calm meant you were broken inside. What they didn't realize was that your calm was the final form, the version that no longer negotiates with disrespect, the version that doesn't beg for loyalty, the version that simply invalidates the unworthy. They kept checking for cracks in you. A late-night message, a sudden rage post, a nostalgic confession. But all they found was silence so controlled it felt intentional, because it was. They underestimated the menace of a mind that no longer needs emotional validation. When someone stops needing reassurance, they also stop being controllable. That shift terrified them more than any outburst ever could. They wanted you to hurt loudly so they could justify their actions. But you denied them the comfort of your suffering. You denied them the evidence they needed to feel less guilty. They expected you to mention the betrayal someday. You never did, and that told them everything they needed to know. They realized too late that when someone goes cold without turning cruel, it means the decision is permanent. Cruelty still wants attention. Coldness does not. They tried to provoke you back into emotion, subtle jabs, public performances, strategic regret. None of it landed. They were throwing stones at a ghost. They couldn't accept that you didn't hate them. Hate still means attachment. You simply erased their relevance from your emotional economy. They used to be a variable in your life. Now they're a canceled expense. They thought the betrayal would leave a scar they could point to. What it left instead was an upgrade in your perception that they could never undo. They started to notice how you moved differently, how your energy shifted from reactive to deliberate, from emotional to lethal in its calm. They wanted to be forgiven so they could continue existing in your world. They didn't realize forgiveness was irrelevant once access was terminated. They mistook your mercy for stupidity at first, until they noticed your mercy came with total removal. They waited for the day you'd explode so they could finally say, "See, we broke them." That day never came, and it destroyed their narrative. They're unsettled because you didn't become bitter. You became precise. They envied your composure because it exposed their chaos. They resented your discipline because it shamed their impulse. They thought betrayal would put them in control of the story. Instead, it wrote them out of the plot completely. They keep wondering if you ever miss them. What they don't want to face is that missing someone requires emotional access, and they lost that privilege. They feel ridiculous now for how calculated their betrayal was. So much strategy, so much planning, and all for a reaction that never arrived. They gambled on your emotions like amateurs at a high-stakes table. You folded quietly and took the entire game with you. They thought betrayal was a power move. They didn't realize it was a resignation letter. They still rehearse the moment they imagine you finally confronting them. But you've left that stage forever. The show ended without applause. They used to study your reactions. Now they study your absence. And that absence has become the loudest verdict they've ever received. They thought they were ending your stability. In truth, they eliminated the last distraction standing between you and your evolution. They tried to hurt you emotionally. You responded operationally. They played with your heart. You closed the entire system. They still don't understand how you turned a moment meant to ruin you into a moment that refined you. Betrayal was supposed to dismantle your identity, but instead it stripped away every illusion you had about people. What remained was sharper, quieter, and far more untouchable than anything they ever knew. They keep mistaking your lack of reaction for delayed pain. They tell themselves it will hit you someday, that you're only pretending to be unaffected. What they don't realize is that the pain already came and it left nothing behind because you converted it into clarity. They believed betrayal would lower your value in your own eyes. Instead, it raised your standards so high they can no longer even approach you without feeling small. They expected revenge in explosions and chaos. They never imagined revenge could look like peace, distance, and irreversible progress. They never imagined punishment could look like indifference. They tried to read your silence like a confession. But silence isn't guilt when it's chosen. Silence is authority when it's deliberate. They wonder when you stopped caring. They don't realize you never stopped caring, you simply stopped bleeding for people who only knew how to cut. They thought the betrayal would live in your memory as a wound. What they didn't anticipate was that it would live in your memory as a lesson, neatly labeled and never reopened. They keep asking themselves whether you ever trusted them at all. The truth hurts too much to admit. You trusted them completely, and that's why they will never get a second opportunity. They imagined you would stand frozen in the wreckage of what they broke. Instead, you built something cleaner from the absence they left behind. They expected shame to follow you, but shame follows the one who knows they failed. You only walked forward. They didn't panic when they thought they still owned access to you. The fear only arrived the moment they realized your decisions no longer revolved around their reactions. Control is quiet when it exists, but when it disappears, it screams inside the one who lost it. At first, they thought you were just taking space. A phase. A bluff. Something temporary they could outwait. They didn't understand that you weren't stepping back to rest, you were stepping out to never return the same. Their confidence collapsed the moment your silence stopped asking questions. You no longer checked their temperature. You no longer sought permission. And that absence of dependence shattered the illusion they lived on. They lost their mind because control was the only language they ever spoke fluently. Manipulation was their comfort zone, and the day you stopped responding to their triggers, their system broke. You didn't argue your way free. You didn't negotiate your escape. You just stopped needing them. And nothing terrifies a controller more than realizing their grip was imaginary. They replayed every moment they thought they had power over you. Every time they assumed you'd stay. Every time they thought you were too attached to leave. And now each memory stabbed them with humiliation. You became unpredictable to them, and unpredictability is poison to anyone addicted to power. They couldn't read you anymore, couldn't provoke you, couldn't pull your strings. And that's when obsession replaced control. They expected retaliation, tears, rage, breakdown, anything that confirmed emotional ownership. But you gave them something far colder: detachment without drama. They started spiraling because your calm made their tactics look childish. You made manipulation feel outdated just by refusing to participate. It haunted them that you didn't look back during your exit, that you didn't hesitate, that you didn't double-check. Your certainty robbed them of every final weapon they hoped to use. They lost their mind because they realized too late you were never trapped, you were choosing. And the moment you chose yourself, their influence became irrelevant. They tried to rewrite the story in their favor, tried to paint you as the villain, but nobody listens to a narrator who lost the main character. Your indifference became their personal hell, because rage would have meant you still cared. Silence meant they no longer mattered. They stalked your progress from a distance, trying to decode how someone they once felt superior to now moved like they were untouchable. They told themselves you'd crawl back. People like them always do. But weeks turned into months, and your absence became permanent. That's when denial turned into madness. They couldn't stand that you weren't broken. You were supposed to crumble without them. You were supposed to hesitate, you were supposed to regret. Instead, you stabilized. They lost their mind because the power dynamic inverted without a single confrontation. No war, just a quiet defeat they couldn't protest. They realized their control only ever worked because you allowed it. And that truth stripped them of the superiority they built their identity on. Your growth humiliated them. Your consistency unnerved them. Your peace insulted them. They tried to bait you back into reaction through gossip, provocation, theatrics, but you stayed unreachable. And unreachable people drive the insecure insane. They lost their mind watching the version of you they never had access to rise without needing their approval. They finally understood that you didn't escape them, you outgrew the need to fight them. And nothing makes a manipulator unravel faster than realizing they are no longer part of the equation. They don't miss you the way healthy people miss others. They miss the control, the access, the leverage, and they lost all of it in one silent decision. They lost their mind because you became free without asking permission. They lost their mind because you proved that power over you was never real, it was borrowed. They lost their mind because you didn't just take your heart back, you took your autonomy, your energy, your future, and your attention with you. And the scariest part for them, you didn't destroy them. You simply removed yourself. And for someone addicted to control, there is no greater punishment than being irrelevant to the one they once thought they owned. They started feeling powerless in ways they had never experienced before, not because someone attacked them, but because no one needed to. Your absence did all the damage their enemies never could. You became the unanswered question, looping in their head at night. They kept wondering how someone they once felt so sure about slipped completely out of reach without resistance. No explosion, no chaos, just a disappearance so clean it felt supernatural. They told themselves you'd return when loneliness hit, but loneliness came for them instead. You, on the other hand, learned how to sit peacefully with your own company, and that destroyed their last illusion. Every time they tried to reassert psychological dominance in their imagination, your reality proved them wrong. You didn't shrink. You didn't weaken. You didn't stay frozen in the version of you they could control. They lost their mind, realizing they could no longer trace your emotional GPS. No mood patterns, no weak points, no predictable reactions. You became a question with no answer key. They expected you to mourn what was lost, but you treated it like something expired, and nothing offends a controller more than realizing they were never irreplaceable. Your growth became an insult they couldn't confront. Your discipline became a mirror they couldn't look into. Every step you took forward reminded them of how small their influence had become. They wondered how control slipped so easily when it once felt effortless. They didn't realize it was never strength, it was permission. And permission can be revoked without discussion. They lost their mind trying to understand when love stopped working as a leash on you, when emotion stopped making you pliable, when attachment stopped making you accessible. They realized too late that they built their confidence on your compliance, and when you stopped complying, their confidence collapsed with it. They wanted closure. You gave them closure by silence. They wanted answers. You gave them distance. They wanted your energy back, but you had already invested it in becoming untouchable. They replayed moments where they thought they had won against you. Now those moments look small, empty, desperate, because a real win wouldn't have ended with them still thinking about you. They lost their mind trying to measure what went wrong. But the truth was simple and unbearable. You didn't belong to them anymore, and that was the only thing that ever mattered. They finally understood control doesn't break when there's a fight. It breaks when there's no audience, no reaction, no response, only departure. You see, they thought control was power. Funny, isn't it? They truly believed that as long as they could pull your strings, shift your moods, predict your reactions, they were important, powerful, necessary. And then one day, you slipped out of their hands without even struggling. No fight, no scene, just silence. And that silence? Oh, That silence did more damage than any scream ever could. They keep telling themselves you'll come back when it hurts enough. That loneliness will drag you back like a broken dog looking for warmth. But the joke is, loneliness found them instead. You learned how to sit in the quiet without bleeding. You learned how to be alone without being empty, and that little lesson shattered every fantasy they had about owning your emotions. They can't track you anymore. No mood patterns, no emotional fingerprints, no predictable storms. You vanished from the map they memorized so well, and nothing terrifies a manipulator more than a soul that becomes untraceable. You didn't just leave the game, you erased the rules. They stare at your growth like it's an insult written directly at them. Your discipline mocks their chaos. Your peace exposes their restlessness. Every step you take forward reminds them of how small their influence really was, and they hate you for that. Quietly, deeply, desperately. They keep replaying the moments where they thought they won, the times they believed they broke you, bent you, owned you. But now those memories feel hollow, because real winners don't end up awake at 3 a.m. thinking about someone who already forgot their voice. They finally realize something sickening. Control never came from strength, it came from permission, and you revoked that permission without explanation, without negotiation, without mercy. You didn't slam the door, you simply stopped standing behind it. They lost their mind trying to figure out when love stopped working as a leash on you, when attachment stopped making you obedient, when emotions stopped being the cage they built around your freedom. The day your heart stopped being a weakness was the day their power died. They wanted closure. You gave them nothing. They wanted answers. You gave them distance. They wanted your energy back, but you had already invested it in becoming untouchable. And now all they have left is memory, and memory doesn't answer phone calls. They were prepared for a long fight, arguments, explanations, emotional breakdowns, dramatic scenes. They were ready for a war of words, not the quiet execution you delivered. They thought you'd panic, plead, or demand answers. Instead, you shut the door without a sound and let silence finish the conversation. They never understood the power of saying nothing. They thought silence meant weakness, but silence was the announcement that the battle had already been won. You weren't avoiding the fight. You simply realized they weren't worth even swinging a sword. They were waiting for reaction, drama, a response they could twist and blame back on you. But how do you twist nothing? How do you manipulate someone who refuses to play? Your silence was the final judgment. No appeal, no second hearing, no retrial. Case closed permanently. They stood there with accusations ready, excuses practiced, tears rehearsed. You were supposed to crumble, defend, justify, explain. But the silence hit them harder than screams ever could. It told them everything. You were done. Silence is terrifying to those who live off control. When they cannot predict you, they cannot own you. And when they cannot own you, they have already lost. They didn't realize that silence is the language of people who have outgrown the situation. A loud exit is for those who still care. You left quietly because there was nothing left to fight for, not love, not loyalty, not respect. Their biggest shock was discovering that the person they once controlled emotionally now had the discipline to detach completely. That's the moment they realized the tables had turned. They expected messages at 2 a.m., long emotional paragraphs, calls begging for understanding. Instead, they got a phone that never rang again and a chat window permanently stuck at last seen. Your silence wasn't an empty space, it was a message. The message said, "I am not fighting for a connection you already destroyed." They kept refreshing their notifications, waiting for a meltdown. Instead, they saw you move on with your life, unbothered, unaffected, unshaken. That scared them more than anger ever could. They expected you to prove your worth. But people who know their worth don't audition. They leave. They tried to provoke you, Poke your wounds, reopen your scars, feed on your emotional reaction, because emotional people are easier to control. But you didn't bleed for them anymore. You healed in silence. Silence became your final weapon. Because words only matter to someone who's listening, and you were done listening. They wanted chaos, but you chose peace. They wanted you emotional, but you became logical. They wanted you desperate, but you became distant. When someone who used to react stops reacting, that's when the truth hits. They never cared about understanding you, they only cared about winning. Your silence forced them to confront themselves, something they never thought would happen. Because as long as you were arguing, they could blame you. When you stopped, they had to blame themselves. And here is the painful truth they now wake up to. Your silence proved you were never the problem. They were. Now they sit with the echoes of their own actions. Because silence forces accountability. Silence is a mirror, and they don't like what they see. They thought the end would be loud, dramatic, emotional. Instead, it was silent, clean, surgical. No explanations, no closure, no warning. Just the realization that the person they took for granted was never coming back. In the end, they finally learned. You didn't stay quiet because you were weak. You stayed quiet because they were no longer worth speaking to. And that realization hurt more than any words ever could. They replay every moment now, trying to understand the exact second when you detached. They look for the clue they missed, the shift in tone, the calm in your eyes, the way you began responding less and observing more. While they were busy trying to win the argument, you were already mentally packing your bags. They swear they would have changed if they had known silence was coming. But that's the truth they can't swallow. You shouldn't have needed to leave for them to act right. The moment you realized they required fear to behave, you knew the relationship was already dead. They spent so long trying to get a reaction that they never considered what would happen if one day you stopped giving one. They forgot that the quietest endings are often the most permanent. One day the messages stopped, the phone stopped ringing, and your heart stopped caring, all without announcement. They underestimated you because you used to show emotions. They didn't know that the quiet version of you was the most dangerous version. People often fear the storm, but they should fear the calm before it, because that's when a decision has already been made. Now they sit there practicing apologies in their heads, apologies they'll never send, because your silence makes them feel unwelcomed before they even type the first word. They can't face you because your lack of reaction makes them face themselves. They wanted leverage, but silence removes leverage. Without your voice, without your presence, without your reactions, they have nothing left to work with. You took away the battlefield and left them swinging in the air. Their ego is fighting with their conscience every day. The ego screams, "Don't reach out," while the conscience whispers, "You messed up." And both voices create a war they never wanted to fight but can't escape. They scroll through old conversations trying to figure out how someone who cared so deeply could go so quiet. Yet the truth is simple. Silence was not the absence of love. It was the absence of tolerance. You could love them and still leave, and that is what they never expected. They thought silence would bring you back eventually, but it only pushed them further into the realization that you weren't coming back at all. The silence never cracked. The wall never shifted. You never returned. And that terrifies them. They show confidence on the outside, pretending they don't care, but inside they are haunted by the fact that someone they thought was emotionally fragile turned out to be emotionally unstoppable. You became a mystery they cannot solve. They check your life from afar, hoping one day you'll break, hoping the silence will end. But every day that passes without a word is a reminder that you've mastered what they never could: self-control. Your silence was your graduation. It showed you no longer needed their validation, affection, or drama. You moved from emotional responses to emotional discipline, and that was the evolution they never prepared for. They used to know how to push your buttons, but now there are no buttons to push. You became untouchable not because you became cold, but because you became wise. You learned the art of disconnecting with grace. They thought silence was empty, but silence was full of meaning. It said, I survived, I learned, I grew, and I no longer need you to understand my worth. That's a sentence no words could match. Now they realize they didn't lose the argument, they lost the person. And losing the person is a loss louder than any fight they ever could have won. Silence became the crown you placed on your own head. Sometimes the most painful goodbye is the one wrapped in no emotion, no breakdown, no closure. And that's exactly what they received, a goodbye that didn't need delivery, because your absence said everything. Your silence wasn't you hiding, it was you healing. It was you choosing peace over chaos, self-respect over explanation, growth over repeating the same cycle. And that decision is the moment everything changed. In the end, they expected shouting, arguments, and passion because that's how most stories end. But not this one. You ended it with the calmest weapon of all, silence. And now the silence echoes in their life louder than any words could have. Because they finally learned a devastating truth. You don't have to slam the door for someone to realize you're gone. Sometimes all it takes is never opening it again. They thought life was a simple cycle: leave, break, betray, return, apologize, and everything resets. But you weren't built to repeat history. You learned. You evolved. And by the time they realized what they lost, you were already rewriting the narrative in ink darker than their intentions. They came back when the storm they created finally cornered them. Suddenly, the villain they painted on the wall looked like the hero they needed. But you weren't interested in being needed anymore. You remembered what it felt like to be disposable, and you decided never to feel that again. They wanted reconciliation because they assumed you were still the same soft-hearted fool who would melt at the sound of their voice. But time and wounds forge steel, and now your silence carried more weight than their apologies ever could. They expected a warm return, not a frigid stare. They expected a conversation, not the solid brick wall of "I've moved on." They wanted you back, but they didn't understand that the version they abandoned didn't exist anymore. You didn't return to the battlefield for peace. You came back with armor, scars, and a memory sharpened into a blade. Not to negotiate, not to rebuild, but to make sure they never forgot the lesson you learned the hard way. They couldn't wrap their minds around why your eyes didn't soften, why your voice didn't tremble, why your heart didn't open. They assumed revenge was screaming, fighting, exposing, destroying. They never expected revenge to be simply outgrowing them. You didn't need explosions, dramatic confrontations, or venom-spitting speeches. All you needed was success, healing, growth, silence. Those were the daggers that cut deeper than any insult you could have thrown. They mistook your absence for weakness, never realizing you were building something far greater while they were busy trying to replace you. And when the truth hit, it hit like a freight train. They could never reach you again. They returned expecting the same door to be open. Instead, they found a fortress. A version of you that didn't beg, didn't plead, didn't break. A version of you they accidentally created when they miscalculated their cruelty. Once upon a time, you chased clarity, ran after explanations, begged for the truth. Now, you didn't care. Closure wasn't necessary anymore because the wounds taught you everything their words never could. They thought coming back was the triumph. They thought you'd be honored, relieved, grateful. But the real victory was standing there, looking at them, and realizing your peace no longer depended on their presence. Revenge wasn't about hurting them. Revenge was watching them deal with the realization that their absence damaged them far more than it damaged you. That's the kind of pain no retaliation can match. They wanted validation, forgiveness, emotional payout. Instead, they got a calmness they never expected. Because once you outgrow someone, the connection dissolves and nothing they do can earn their way back in. They expected regret sitting on your shoulders. Instead, You showed them a posture stronger, steadier, untouchable. Strength was the new language you spoke, and they were illiterate in it. You remembered the nights you barely breathed. They remembered none of it. They expected a reunion, but you remembered the pain, the betrayal, the broken promises. And that memory kept you grounded while they tried to drag you into déjà vu. You weren't the same. And that terrified them more than anything, because they realized the monster they crafted wasn't a villain, it was someone they could no longer manipulate, guilt trip, or command. At first they believed your distance was an act, that you were just wounded and waiting to be lured back. But eventually they realized that the cliff wasn't emotional, it was final. They could scream from the other side forever and still never get a response. They didn't fear losing you when they walked away. They feared losing the version of you that cared, and that version died the day you finally chose self-respect over their chaos. Revenge wasn't plotting their failure, it was building a life where their absence was an upgrade, and once you reached that level, even their return felt like a downgrade. They ran back hoping to press resume, but you had already pressed delete. And there's nothing more terrifying to someone who once had power than realizing their control expired. You didn't slam doors, you outgrew hallways. You didn't destroy them, you simply stopped giving them access. And that was the kind of revenge they were never prepared to face. They stopped laughing when they realized the joke ended up on them. They gambled with someone who wasn't afraid to lose. They thought your heart was the weakness, but it became the weapon. They hated that you didn't try to fix things, that you didn't fight, that you didn't come back. Because your lack of reaction proved a truth they weren't ready to accept. They mattered more to themselves than they ever mattered to you. And when the dust settled, when their apologies echoed unanswered, they finally realized why your revenge worked so well. It didn't destroy them, it made them live with the fact that losing you was their own doing. You won not by breaking them, but by becoming the version of yourself that didn't need them anymore. And nothing burns deeper than standing in front of someone who once thought you'd collapse without them, and proving you never needed them at all. They started realizing the gravity of their mistake when you didn't blink, didn't flinch, didn't ask why. The silence they always weaponized was finally used against them, and this time, they were the ones drowning in unanswered questions. The irony was delicious. The person who once begged now walked away without saying a word. They never understood that love changes, hardens, evolves. They never imagined that the same heart that once cared enough to bleed could also cauterize the wound and keep walking. They built a monster and expected it to stay obedient, but monsters with memories are the hardest ones to leash. Once upon a time, you would have listened to their excuses, their reasons, their carefully packaged apologies. But experience becomes armor, and you learn something priceless. Closure isn't something given, it's something taken. And once you took yours, they had nothing left to offer. They underestimated how much strength a broken spirit could develop. They underestimated how much wisdom betrayal could teach. They underestimated how much transformation pain could force. And by the time they recognized the new version of you, the evolution was complete. What scared them wasn't your coldness, it was your stability, your calm, your peace. Because they were so used to chaos that they imagined you needed them to stay balanced. Seeing you balanced without them shattered their pride far more than any revenge ever could. You walked past them with a smile that wasn't forced, with eyes that showed no hesitation, with shoulders that carried no emotional debt. That image haunted them, because it proved one thing: they overestimated their importance in your story. They returned expecting vulnerability. Instead, they found someone who had outgrown the chapter entirely. You weren't revisiting old wounds, you were too busy writing new victories. And that reality cut deeper than all the tears you could have shed. They thought your silence was cruelty, but silence was mercy. Because speaking would have revealed just how little you thought of the situation anymore. Silence was the final nail in the coffin, a gesture that said, "You're not worth the sentence." Every step you took forward without them reminded them that their loss wasn't temporary. They tried to convince themselves you were just in a phase, that sooner or later you would snap back. But every passing day proved the opposite. You were gone for good. The greatest punishment was watching you become everything they tried to convince you you weren't. Strong, valuable, desired, respected. Their betrayal became the fire, and you turned the ashes into bricks for the foundation of a better future. They came back expecting to negotiate, but revenge was never about bargaining. It was the quiet decision that their access ended, their role expired, their chapter closed. They expected you to leave a door cracked open, but you built a new house in a new city and never gave them the address. They were terrified not because you changed, but because you didn't need them to change. Growth happened without their guidance, their apology, or their permission. And nothing bruises an ego like being replaced by self-worth. You knew they wanted redemption only because they feared consequences. They didn't want to make things right, they just wanted to escape accountability. And once you learned to distinguish genuine remorse from fear of losing control, their words lost all value. They thought rejection would break you, but surviving it only made you lethal. Not in anger, not in rage, but in the simple fact that you no longer played their game. And when you stopped playing, they lost all their power. The truth that kept them awake at night was this: they didn't lose you because they made a mistake. They lost you because they thought they could make one and still get you back. And realizing that you weren't waiting for them anymore, that was the real revenge. They never realized cruelty was a sculptor. Every insult, every betrayal, every manipulative silence was a chisel against your old identity. Piece by piece, the soft version of you cracked away, and something colder, sharper, more unshakable took its place. They thought they were breaking you, but all they did was carve your evolution. They believed their disrespect would make you beg, fold, soften, or surrender. Instead, it hardened you. It taught you that the world does not reward the gentle, at least not while they are gentle in the hands of the ungrateful. You learn that kindness without protection becomes self-harm. They will meet a version of you that does not shrink, a version that demands boundaries instead of hoping for decency. Pain matured you into someone who knows your value without needing them to confirm it. That transformation was their unintended creation. They thought emotional damage would weaken you, but wounds forced you to grow muscle. Scars became armor. Where your heart once bled too freely, now it bleeds only for what has earned your tenderness. Their cruelty brought out the warrior they were never prepared to face. Once, you explained yourself. You justified yourself. You begged to be understood. But that season is over. Now you speak less. And your silence has more power than your old, desperate words ever did. They crafted that silence by ignoring your voice for too long. They thought you'd spend your life stuck in the memory of what they did. But instead, you turned memory into motivation. Their betrayal was a foundation, not a grave. They built the fire, but you decided whether to burn in it or rise out of it. They will meet a version of you that doesn't apologize for existing. Their cruelty erased the insecurity that made you feel small around them. Now you stand without shrinking. That confidence is their accidental gift. Once, you would have accepted the bare minimum, a breadcrumb of affection, a half-invested apology. Now you demand full presence or you walk away without hesitation. They taught you that. By giving you less, they taught you what you deserve. They will meet the version of you that is emotionally expensive. Not because you are difficult, but because now access to you requires honesty, respect, and consistency, currencies they never invested. Their manipulation killed the part of you that kept explaining your heart. Now, instead of proving your worth, you simply show it. And if someone can't recognize it, you leave them behind. No warnings, no second speeches. They trained you without realizing it. Every time they lied, you learned observation. Every time they dismissed your feelings, you learned emotional survival. Every time they walked away, you learned how to stand alone. Once, you cried over people who didn't even care about their own actions. Now you no longer waste emotion on anyone unwilling to meet you at the level you offer. Your tears have become investments, not reactions. They tried to turn you into someone bitter and destructive, but instead you became someone calculated and discerning. Controlled power is far more dangerous than rage, and that is the version they created. They expected their absence to break you. Instead, it stabilized you. You found out that you function better without the drama, the minimizing, the cycle of hope and disappointment. Peace taught you what love was supposed to feel like. They taught you how not to be treated. Sometimes that is the greatest lesson, realizing what behavior you will never again tolerate. That newfound self-respect is a weapon they handed you unknowingly. They will encounter the version of you that no longer explains why you left, because the explanation is self-evident. Anyone who truly valued you would have never needed the conversation. Their coldness forced you to self-soothe. Their distance forced you to grow independent. Their neglect taught you how to prioritize yourself. Growth born from abandonment is brutal but powerful. They will meet the version of you that doesn't break in pressure, because pressure is where you were forged. People forget that diamonds and resilience are born in the same environment. Once, they thought you were naive. Now they realize you were compassionate, and compassion in the wrong hands looks like naivety. You didn't change your heart, you just changed who deserves access to it. They wanted you to return weaker, but life doesn't work that way. People rarely return the same after their innocence is violated. They return wiser, colder, more precise versions built by fire. Their cruelty didn't just change how you see them, it changed how you see yourself. You stopped underestimating your ability to survive. You stopped believing you needed them to function. Their cruelty broke an illusion, not you. They will meet the version of you that can walk away without shaking. The version that understands that losing someone who never valued you isn't loss, it's freedom disguised as heartbreak. Once, they could ruin your whole day with one careless sentence. Now you can hear 10 insults and remain unshaken. Emotional control became your quiet superpower, one shaped entirely by the chaos they brought. They will meet the version of you that doesn't rush to respond. Delay became strategy, silence became clarity. You learned that not everything needs a reaction, and sometimes the strongest move is to simply not play. They thought they could define you. Instead, they revealed you. Sometimes cruelty is an unintended mirror. It forces you to see the strength you never realized you had. Their damage allowed your evolution. They wanted you to stay predictable, emotional, hurt, dependent. But now your unpredictability is their punishment. They don't know what you feel. They don't know what you think. That guessing is their new anxiety. They expected you to be scared of losing them. But you realized the truth: you were only losing the version of you that was willing to tolerate what you never deserved. The real loss was theirs, never yours. They will meet the version of you that chooses peace, even when chaos is offered. The version that knows silence is not weakness, it is power, discipline, and emotional maturity. Growth looks like stillness, and they can't interpret it. They built a storm around you, hoping to drown you. Instead, you became the storm. Stronger, quieter, more focused. They created the very force they now fear. And when they eventually look at you, really look, they will understand the harsh truth. You are not the person they hurt. You are the person their cruelty helped build. That version wasn't born in comfort. It was crafted in fire. Their fire. They never imagined that the version of you who loved them unconditionally would one day no longer exist. That innocence, that softness, that willingness to sacrifice, they killed it themselves. And now they mourn a version of you they destroyed, not realizing that every time they crossed the line, you crossed another stage of evolution. They assumed their disrespect would be forgiven the way it always had been. They thought you would sweep everything under the emotional rug and pretend it didn't hurt. But the difference now is simple. You didn't get colder because you stopped caring. You got wiser because you finally learned to care about yourself first. They are only shocked because they never expected consequences. They believed access to you was permanent, unconditional, unshakable. They thought you would always come back, always excuse the pain, always keep your heart unlocked. Their shock is not about losing you, it's about realizing they never truly understood you at all. The new version of you is not cruel, just unavailable to those who once took advantage. You do not act out of revenge, you act from evolution. They taught you that some doors deserve to stay closed, not because you are bitter, but because you finally see your own value clearly. They are confused now because their usual tactics don't work on you. The guilt trips, the emotional bait, the passive aggression, none of it lands. You've outgrown the emotional prison they once convinced you was normal. Growth always looks like coldness to those who benefited from your warmth. Once, they had the power to pull you back in with a few sweet words. Now their words mean nothing because words without changed behavior are just manipulation with better vocabulary. You learned the difference the hard way, and you'll never unlearn it again. Their biggest mistake was thinking silence would weaken you. Instead, you used that silence to rebuild, to think, to heal, to transform. They expected you to wait for them to become better, but instead, you became better without them. They never realized that the version of you they used to mistreat was temporary. People don't stay soft forever. Some become stronger, some become smarter, and some become unreachable. They crafted the very distance that now keeps them locked outside of your life. They now fear you not because you became dangerous, but because you can now walk away without hesitation. They can no longer control your emotions, or your fears, or your decisions. Emotional independence is the one thing abusers never expect their targets to develop. It is ironic they wanted you to break, yet you became unbreakable. They tried to tear out your wings, but instead they turned you into something that doesn't need wings at all. You don't fly anymore, you rise. And rising is something they cannot stop or understand. They expected you to explode, scream, cry, demand apologies, and throw words like broken glass across the room. They wanted the drama. They wanted the emotional meltdown. They wanted proof that they still mattered enough to shake you, but you gave them something far more dangerous: indifference. They hate that you're not raging, not arguing, not trying to prove your side. They were prepared for a battle and found no opponent. Your silence turned the war into a funeral, and they're the only ones mourning something that you already buried long ago. They don't understand how someone who once cared so deeply could switch off the light and walk out of the room without hesitation. They don't understand that caring has a limit, and they pushed you right past it. Now they're standing on the ashes of something they started, wondering how you managed to walk away without getting burned. They hate that you're not angry because anger would mean you still feel something. Anger is still involvement. Anger still means the heart is engaged. But you're beyond that stage. You're not fighting. You're finished. And finished is a power they never expected you to have. They were ready with manipulations, excuses, half-truths, and sweetened lies. They thought they could reel you back in with guilt or guilt-shaming, but you didn't argue or stay to negotiate. You nodded, understood, and left. That terrified them more than any confrontation ever could. They hate that you figured them out. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, like someone closing a book that they had already finished reading. You noticed the patterns. You measured their actions. You connected the dots. And once the truth was complete, you chose peace over participation. They never expected you to choose the exit. They thought you would stay out of habit, familiarity, fear, attachment, or emotional loyalty. But you changed roles from someone who tried to save the relationship to someone who realized they were saving themselves instead. Now they're the ones trying to catch up with the reality they created. They hate that you didn't wait for apologies. Apologies would mean closure, and closure would give them a sense of control. But you didn't need closure, you gave it to yourself. When someone no longer needs answers, the person withholding them loses all power. They can't accept that you don't care enough to be angry. That's the blow they never saw coming. They thought they injured the heart, not realizing they only exposed its strength. People become done only after they've spent every last attempt trying to make something work. They hate that they don't get to witness your breakdown, that there is no emotional performance for them to enjoy, no weakness left to exploit, no openings to re-enter. You didn't collapse, you shut the door, and the chapter and the entire story. And what's scarier is that you did it without a single word. They're replaying every mistake in their head, trying to figure out where you finally checked out. Was it the lie? The disrespect? The silence? They don't know because your final straw happened quietly. They didn't see the switch flip. They only saw the aftermath once the light went out. They hate that your silence is your revenge, not the dramatic kind, the permanent kind. Silence is the Joker's sharpest weapon, and you wielded it perfectly. Because silence forces a person to sit alone with themselves, and they don't like the reflection that stares back. They hate that you didn't need closure from them because you learned the most important lesson. Closure doesn't come from someone who broke you. It comes from the strength to walk away without needing them to understand why. They hate that you stopped explaining yourself. People only explain when they think someone is capable of understanding. They realize too late that you no longer cared whether they understood or not. Explanation is investment, and you made your last deposit. They hate that your absence is louder than your presence ever was. When you were there, they took your voice for granted. Now that you're gone, your silence echoes in every corner of their life. The absence hurts more than any argument ever would. They hate that you didn't curse their name, poison their reputation, or go around telling people what happened. You just left, clean, calm, controlled. And now they must carry the weight alone because the villain they tried to paint you as never showed up. They hate that you healed. People comfortable with your pain feel threatened by your recovery. The moment you stopped bleeding, their sense of superiority evaporated. Healing took away their leverage. Peace rewrote your story without needing them in it. They hate that your life didn't fall apart. In fact, it got better. New peace, new confidence, new clarity. Betrayal didn't destroy you, it transformed you. And watching you evolve without them is the punishment life gave them on your behalf. They hate that they now understand how replaceable they were. Not because you told them, but because you moved on without hesitation. Replacement isn't finding someone new. Replacement is learning you never needed them in the first place. They hate that they are stuck in the moment you left, while you've already entered a new chapter. They are frozen in regret. You are flowing with purpose. They are rewatching the past. You are writing the next page, and that difference hurts. They hate that you're not trying to make them regret losing you because you don't care if they do. Your life stopped revolving around their reaction. And nothing scares a manipulator more than losing emotional influence over the person they once controlled. They hate that they lost access to you, to your heart, your presence, your loyalty, your magic. They didn't lose just a person, they lost the version of you that would have done anything for them. And that version is dead, buried, and not coming back. They hate that your goodbye wasn't a scene, it was a decision. A calm, quiet, irreversible choice. Nothing is scarier than someone who leaves with peace. Because peace means certainty, and certainty means you're not coming back. They hate that being done gives you more power than being angry ever could. Anger burns out. Being done doesn't. Anger fades. Being done lives forever. And now they must face the truth the hard way. The story is over and you're the one who turned the final page. And the cruel, poetic irony is this. They wanted a reaction to feel important. But by giving them nothing, you finally showed them their true value in your life. They hate that you didn't fight for the connection because it meant you realized something they never wanted you to see, that the relationship was already dying long before you left. And once a person finally sees what's true, pretending becomes impossible. You didn't abandon them. You just stopped lying to yourself. They hate that you no longer react to their presence. No tension, no emotional spike, no anger, no sadness. Just neutrality. Indifference is terrifying because it means the heart has healed. And when the heart heals, the past loses its power. They never expected to become just another chapter, but here they are, collecting dust. They hate that they can't guilt trip you anymore. Guilt used to bend you. Shame used to silence you. Emotional pressure used to pull you back. But now those tricks bounce off you like bullets against steel. They lost their ability to move you, and that loss is something their ego can't swallow. They hate that you don't even want revenge. Revenge would still mean they live rent-free in your head. But you chose something much colder. You outgrew the battlefield entirely. Nothing crushes a person more than realizing they are no longer important enough to even hate. They hate the way you smile because they know they didn't put that smile there. Someone else did. Something else did. Your peace did. And that smile reminds them that they no longer have the emotional control they used to masterfully enjoy. They hate that you don't explain your silence. They want answers. They want closure. They want dialogue. But you learn the most dangerous truth of all: silence is closure. Silence is explanation. Silence is a sentence passed without a trial, and they never saw it coming. They hate that the version of you they knew no longer exists. You shed your skin, your patterns, your emotional reflexes. You upgraded into someone who doesn't run toward the fire, someone who walks away from the building before it collapses. Growth is your revenge, and it burns. They hate that they don't know what you're thinking anymore. You used to be easy to read, emotional, expressive, available. Now your emotions are a locked vault, and your thoughts are private property. They don't know what's happening in your world, and the unknown shakes their security. They hate that people still admire you, despite everything they did to tear you down, despite the lies, despite the disrespect. You ended up earning respect they didn't see coming. It proves that your character was stronger than their injustice, and that realization is a knife in their pride. They hate that losing you wasn't mutual. You didn't lose anything when you walked away. You gained yourself. But they lost a person who truly cared for them, and they are now forced to live with the reality that their choices cost them someone who never planned to replace them easily. They hate that you don't care who they talk to, what they post, who they date, or what they do. Indifference is worse than jealousy. Indifference means emotional death. And watching you move on without emotional turbulence feels like a verdict they can't overturn.